Well, I want to welcome you back to the CSE100 today. Before we get started, you can put away your electronic devices and have our attention given to our guest speaker today. We're joined today by Wein. He is alum of MSU Computer Science, bachelor's degree, master's degree. He's actually from East Lansing area, so he's been sort of Spartan from many years ago. And he has chosen at this time a career path I think is very interesting. He works in something called open source software, and particularly at working for Mozilla. And I would assume that all of you know something about Mozilla. You probably use some Mozilla software regularly, maybe not. I certainly do. And so he can say something more about what it's like to have a job where that is what you do, develop and work with that. So we're very pleased to have Jared come back to us, and with that I'll turn it over to Jared.
So today I wanted to talk about how you can have a career in open source software. I think one of the many beliefs is that there's no money to be made in open source software. It's just a lot of people who work in their basements, but it's not true. You can actually make it a very good living working on free and open source software. So first, I just wanted to ask all of you here, if any of you, just show a raise of hands, how many of you have made a website? It's good. I think it's better than when I was a professional. And so it's definitely improving. And then, so this is, just because I work for Mozilla and I work on Firefox does not mean you have to buy into your answer. So, show of hands on your favorite web browser. So first, Opera. Anybody here Opera users? Okay, one in the back. And Safari. Okay, 3, 4, 5. Chrome. Okay, a lot. And Firefox. Okay. Is that everything out on the next? Sorry, Internet Explorer. That's not a joke. C1? Okay. Links? Who's using links? How's your YouTube experience? Alright, so a little bit of my background here. I got started with computers at a young age. I don't know. Everybody says that. Maybe like 6 years old, but I wasn't really programming. I was just playing video games. My mom got me interested in computers. She was not afraid to open them up and change a hard drive. Then when I was in middle school, I made my first website all about skateboarding. It was the best. And I didn't really get into programming until I got to machine safety. So I did one class of programming in high school, but by the time I got to machine safety, I was not super deep or super experienced with writing software. I stayed at Michigan State. I got my bachelor's in computer science, and then I graduated. I worked at TechSmith, which is an open industry. You've heard of them before. I worked there for 3 years while working on my master's in computer science. And then upon graduating with my master's, I joined Mozilla. So, Mozilla is a non-profit company. So, it's a little bit different. A lot of companies are shooting to make the most money that they can in Mozilla. Obviously, we make money, but our goal is not to make money. Our goal is to promote openness, innovation, and opportunity on the web. That's really what we strive for. So, to start, we have to go actually quite far back over to the University of Illinois or Champaign, where there were a group of graduate students that were working on a web browser. And this web browser was called Mosaic. And I don't think, have any of you here used Mosaic? You've heard of it? Okay, I think at least one of the guys has used, a couple people have used Mosaic. Okay, Gopher? Helmet? This is good. It's really good. I'm really surprised. So Mosaic was the web browser that they created. And the students left the university, they moved out to California, and they wanted to create a business around this web browser. They were going to sell the web browser. Well, the University of Illinois said, hey, we own the rights to that. So they created their own business, and they called it Netscape. Netscape was around for a while. It was also, they made money, they sold copies of it. And then Microsoft said, well, we're going to create Internet Explorer, and we'll bundle it with Windows, and it'll be free. This was a huge problem for Mozilla, or for Netscape at the time, because that was their bottom line, and they were going to lose all their money. So there were a series of steps. They got acquired by AOL. That didn't really change a whole lot. And then they decided, well, the only way we can compete with Microsoft is if we open source our browser and try and build up an army of volunteers. Then, and that open source effort was called Mozilla. So, there was the Mozilla Suite, which had an email client, a web browser, a calendar, and so forth. It's kind of this whole like Office kind of editor thing. Then, after a while, that people complained it was getting too resource hungry, too big, too hard to edit features, too hard to remove features. So, out of the ashes of that, and this is the, if you never understood the name of Firefox, this explains it. Out of the ashes of Mozilla Suite came this Phoenix. And Phoenix was the new web browser. That was going to replace Mozilla. But then it turned out that there was some software company, I think it might have been a BIOS manufacturer, named Phoenix. So that name got the axe. And then they went with Firebird, which is very similar. And then it turned out there's another software company that uses the name Firebird. So then they went with Firefox. So that's where Firefox comes from. It's a friendly animal, looks like a fox. So many of you probably know Mozilla for Firefox or for Thunderbird. But we have a whole lot of other things that we do. These would be Firefox OS, or our code name was Boochie Gecko. That's a mobile phone that we're working on. It's pretty early. It's a smartphone. It's fully 100% web technologies. And it's early. We're only in our second year of development, but we already are selling these phones in market with operators in multiple countries. Not in the U.S. yet, although you can buy them off of eBay in the U.S. We have the Rust programming language. This is a memory-safe, concurrent programming language, which we are building specifically for our next generation web browsers, which we want that to be fully parallel and memory safe as everybody wants. 3D programming. So Mozilla was the pioneer, one of the pioneers for WebGL, bringing 3D programming into the internet, and also the JavaScript language. So our CTO Brendan Ike, who's the inventor of JavaScript. And he's still extremely active in JavaScript. And there are a number of people that also that work on standards for JavaScript and research. So Mozilla is you guys still hear me? Yeah? I think the microphone's put up. So Mozilla is working to solve a number of issues, but most importantly, we want the internet to be open, which means that people would be allowed to have a say in how technologies are developed. Free, in that people should have the ability to share ideas without restrictions. Accessible. So information should not be limited to those who have special advantages. Personal, you should be able, obviously, to customize and personalize the internet, and also representative. It should represent the people who are using the internet. So, all of my work that I do is in the open, it's all public. So, question to the audience, how does that enable meaningful participation? How does working in the open change how people work? So Matt said that since all of our work is public, we're more pressured we're more worried about repercussions of citizens' law. We're not as likely to do something bad because we can see other people are watching what we're doing. But we're good. What's your name? So for those who couldn't hear, Dan said that people who are watching, they're able to then give ideas for ways to improve that we might not have thought of. And I think both of those are really important points. Both of them are really true. It's really important to have people watching what you're doing when you give them permission to watch what you're doing. But it allows for some good checks and balances to make sure you're not doing the wrong things. And it can also, it's impossible for us, no matter how large Mozilla is as a company of employees, it's impossible for us to have all of the good ideas. And one last part, Richard.
Easy to accessible is the open source
And your name?
Chris.
Chris, everybody can hear Chris? Yeah, he said accessible. So it also is a means to an end. So it's not all about how open that we are, though. It's really about how does it help us to be more agile, and how does it produce visible progress in momentum. We want to make sure that we're doing good. If we're not having constant dialogue with people, then it's too hard for us to think that we're doing good and get off track by not doing good. So one example of this is some people have like quarterly goals where a company might say, this year we want to increase profit by this amount. Or you may find a open source group that says, this year we want to implement these features, we want to fix these bugs, and so forth. So there are various say that it's not a toggle. No company or group is open source or closed source. There's a whole spectrum. So to start, there are some projects that are completely closed source. They don't share their code at all, but they still, hopefully, they still have some other ways that they work with their community. Some of them respond to messages over Twitter. They talk with their users about issues that they have. Other groups, they may not make their software available, but they make their localizations available so other people can translate to different languages. Some companies, what they decide to do is they work really hard on something, and then when they're ready, then they throw it over the shelf and say, okay, here's all the source code. So, is that open source? Or, I mean, I'm sure some of you have seen mobile phone operating systems that are done like that, right? Where the company works on the new version of the mobile phone operating system, and then when they're ready to release it, when they're ready, then they put the source code out there for you to look at. So that's different, also a different style of open source. That's just kind of very literally open source code. And then there's Mozilla. And Mozilla doesn't stand alone, there are other groups that do this. But Mozilla is fully open from day one. So when I talked about that goal planning process, it's kind of hard for somebody who's not an employee to have a say in what should be the goals if they're not involved in deciding those goals. So we involve people all the way from the beginning. For example, when we started work on our phone, the day one when we announced it by creating a repository on GitHub, which had 0 commits. There was no work that had been done at that point. And we started from there. So people were able to join the same day I was able to join as an employee. So, how many of you here have visited GitHub before or heard of it? Okay. How many of you have accounts on GitHub and have code up there probably the same number? How many of you have submitted a pull request to another repository? You got half a hand. Okay. Can I ask you what you submitted to?
I just pulled a project a friend was working on for a CSE class.
Okay. So it's a really cool way so GitHub is a really cool way that you can work together and collaborate. And it's something new that people couldn't really do 5 years ago. So, what does this mean to me as a software developer at Mozilla? Well, it's really, to be an open source, it's really easy for me to jump around. So my main work is focused on the web browser, desktop, Firefox. I work on Windows, Mac, and Linux. All three, they overlap. Their code is really highly shared. But it makes it really easy for me to also fix bugs on our Android browser and on our mobile phone. Also other parts of the project that are not browser related I can work on. And it's really, really easy to do so. There are times, when I first joined Mozilla, one time I put up a patch for review, and like an hour later I had a comment from somebody who I had never met before, nothing like that, and he said, oh, you did this completely wrong. You completely screwed this up. And so at first I was just shocked. I was shocked because I was like, who is this person? They're like staring at what I'm doing. But they were so right. They knew it way better than I did. So it was really cool to get that feedback and make sure that that you're doing the work the right way. I think it's kind of important. Like you lose a lot of pride really quickly, and that's good because at the end of the day, the work that you're doing you always just want to make the best product. You want to give the best experience for our people. So, your product takes a hit, but in the end, you know that you're doing better and you're learning from it. And also, I have the freedom to talk openly about what I work on. I can talk what I was programming last night, talk what I was programming a month ago, it doesn't matter where it is in the release cycle. And I also can get a lot of visibility for this. So I've been pretty fortunate to get quoted for my blog in magazines and websites. Just last week I was on CNET, which is pretty neat. And I'm always humbled when I see that. So, what are the downsides to working? Before I show this, what do people think are some downsides to working in the open? Over here? Stealing your code, okay. And one right behind you too.
It's like, if you make mistakes out there, it's open, you can take that.
Right. Yeah, if you make a mistake, it's out there, it's open, you can't take it back. And that's kind of another one of those humbling things where, people see you screw up. You fall on your face, everybody sees it, and you have to get over it, but it's there. I mean, this is the same as if you're working at a company. Your other coworkers are going to see your mistakes. The only difference is now you have thousands of coworkers. So it's a little bit bigger. You have one to end here?
If there's something wrong with my code, it's going to be very obvious, so we can very easily take advantage of that.
Like a security vulnerability?
Yeah.
Yes and no. I'd say, so what he said was, if there's a bug in your code that makes your code more vulnerable, people are going to take advantage of that. People will take advantage of it, they'll see it. But that doesn't only happen if you're open source. So there are a lot of closed source software, people finding vulnerabilities just as easily. A lot of these vulnerabilities are really hard to spot with the naked eye.
I can't be sure on this because I've never seen the numbers, but I would assume that organizational income, since it's an open source organization, could vary greatly based on how much people are willing to donate.
So he said organizational income could vary greatly based on how much people are willing to donate. So it's kind of maybe as a question on what happens to my salary if people stop donating to Mozilla in a way. So Mozilla is interesting because we don't just make money off of donations. In fact, all of the donations go to the Mozilla Foundation. And technically I work for the Mozilla Corporation, which is owned by the foundation. And the corporation makes the lion's share of its money with partnerships with other companies such as Google, where we have a search deal with them where we refer people to their search to Google and they pay us money for that deal. So my salary is pretty secure in that deal. And that deal helps fund the majority of Mozilla. So we're pretty stable on that deal. The donations obviously help our foundation with a lot of the outreach work that we do. But Mozilla is very stable in terms of its revenue. So some people have mentioned that everyone sees your mistakes. There are mean people on the internet. There are people who tell you that you suck and that what you're doing is horrible and you're destroying their web browser. But some of the good things, some of the other things that are interesting about it, really cool, is that we have a really geodiverse community. So there are people that I work with on a daily basis that are spread all the way around the world, in every corner. I have a friend that lives in Brazil. I have friends in Canada, California, London, Amsterdam, New Zealand, and I have the opportunities to go travel and see them and work alongside them in those locations. So that's a lot of fun. I get to work from home in East Lansing, so that means I'm able to go California for a couple of years. I really appreciate that. So, some days, most days I don't wake up until about 10 or 11 o'clock, which is kind of nice. But that's just because I'm on this, you know what? Yeah. So, some days, though, I get completely upside down, and I work like from 8 p.m. till 6 a.m. Because there's always someone, your coworkers are always online. One of your coworkers is always online. Whether it's the guy that's in California, or the guy that's in New Zealand, or the designer in Toronto, and so forth. And it also means that some days I don't shower until the afternoon. But that's cool because none of my coworkers smell me because they're not in the same room as I am. And I hate to travel and be face to face with people. So this is a picture of, we did this summit in Belgium a couple months ago. It was called Mozilla Summit. So what we do is we bring together all of our employees and volunteers. We treat them just equally. And we bring them all together for like a 3-day conference. This conference was in Belgium. This year there was 3 simultaneous ones. One in Belgium, one in Santa Clara, California, and one in Toronto. And 600 people at each location. So it's a very huge conference. Question? Alright, so what are some problems that people think that are working? There's no wrong answer. I'm just curious. Yeah? Making Firefox faster? Yeah? Yeah, right here. Fix bugs that show up, like what type of bugs? Search engines or website bugs? Right here? Adapting the browser to newer technologies as they come out? Get one? JavaScript performance? There's a lot of hands up, so I can't get to them all. Quality assurance and compatibility. So all of those are true. All of those are true. And I think the key to that is there's a lot of those. So I can't do all of those. JavaScript performance, we have a team that works on that. It's like 8 people that work on JavaScript performance. It's actually not that many. We bought the place project. So my goals, I work on the Firefox team. That's what we call it within the community, the Firefox team. And we have about 40 employees on the team and 4 volunteers. But it's not a huge team by any means. So I work on improving the usability of the browser and balancing usability with security needs. So I'll cover 2 of the projects that I've worked on. So this first project is called Click-to-Play Plugins. And basically, the goal of this project is we want to reduce the number of users that are affected by viruses, malware, via plugins as they're casually browsing the internet. Some of you have probably heard of vulnerabilities in Java and Flash, and we want to make sure that our users are kept secure, but we also want to make sure that they can still visit their banking website that requires Java. So this is a really hard challenge because we don't want to break the web. It'd be really easy for us to say, no more plugins starting tomorrow, and now we're way more secure than we ever were. But then a lot of like YouTube wouldn't work, Google Earth wouldn't work, a lot of banks in Korea wouldn't work. A lot of those require Java. then once we get permission, then we tell the website to continue. Websites weren't created that way. They just try to use it, and if it doesn't work, they think it's not installed. They think there's a bug. So we need to work with that in mind. And this is a project I've been working on for a year and a half, and we're about a week away from turning this on. It's a really big deal. It will significantly increase the security of Firefox, and it'll also increase the performance of Firefox, decrease the memory, and a number of issues. Question in the back?
Will there be an option to just automatically have the plugins activate?
Will there be an option to have plugins automatically activate? So the way that this works is it's a security-focused feature. So for Flash, if you're running the latest version, it will automatically activate. If you're running Java, the latest version, I'm not sure what we're going to do. I don't want to say the wrong thing. But if it's an older version of Java, then we will lock it. There is no way to, if it's a known vulnerable version of Java, we will not, I don't believe there's a way to permanently allow it for a website. If there is not a known vulnerability, then yes, you can permanently allow these plugins on a website basis. And the reason that this has taken a year and a half is because we implemented once, we put it out there, we did user research studies, people were confused about it, a lot of people had no idea what this was. They said, why isn't YouTube working? We brought it back, we redid it, and we've been going through the motions trying to make sure that what we put out there is the right solution and not just a solution at first. So the other large project that I've been working on is called Australis. And this is a big redesign of Firefox. It's going to change how it looks. This is a screenshot of a mock-up of Firefox. And what you can see here is that the selected tab has this curve on there. Background tabs, they fade in with the menu bar there. So you get more prominence to the selected tab. We've changed how people customize the web browser. We have a whole new menu. And a lot of this is we want to keep Firefox modern, updated, looking really cool, and also we want to improve customization of Firefox is probably one of our strongest features, but a lot of people don't know about it. So we want to make that easier to use, easier to find. So, one of the challenges that faced in doing this new design is that, as I showed you, we had this rectangular tab shape, and then we changed it to this curved tab shape. And in doing so, we changed the technologies that we're using to draw that tab. So, in case any of you didn't know, in fact, many of you probably don't know, Firefox, the whole browser user interface is all done using web technology, HTML, Zool, which is very like HTML, JavaScript, CSS. So we're really eating our own dog food with this. So we switched the technology to draw that. We use something called SVG to draw that tab shape. And you can see here our tab open times. We measure all of these every single time somebody makes a change to Firefox to run through a suite of tests. So it used to take something like 24 milliseconds to open up the tab open animation. 24 milliseconds there. And for the frame interval. Sorry. So, and then now sounds like a low number, right? Like, okay, 24 to 39 milliseconds. Is anybody going to notice 15 milliseconds? I have one nod, head nod. Do you play video games? Okay. Anybody else here play video games? Okay. First-person shooters? Yes? So you know, so our goal, we want to have 60 frames per second. So how many milliseconds is one frame if you're 60 frames per second? Who's got a calculator? Nobody does. It's like 16 milliseconds, right? So these frame intervals means how long it takes us to paint a frame before we can bring it up to the screen. If it's taking us 39 milliseconds, that's a lot of lag. Users will start to notice this. If you play a first-person shooter, you know that lag kills you in the game. Someone else gets off the shot before you do, right? And in a web browser, all software, this responsiveness is a huge deal. It's one of the reasons why the iPhone has been so successful, is because it's super responsive. You touch somewhere and it moves. As a comparison, if you were to see this box that I have in the front of the room, if I went to pull this box, and then you saw it catch up to my hand because there was some lag with it sliding across the table, your brain would have this weird disconnect. Something's not right there. And it's important that software matches what people are expecting in the real world. So if you click on a button, and you have to wait, even if you wait just those 15 milliseconds, your brain can tell the difference. It's the same reason why movies are at 30 frames per second and not nowadays many of them are higher because any lower, when your brain just sees a series of pictures, it doesn't actually see movement. So then we went through and we did a whole lot of optimizations. It was not overnight, it took many months, and we got it to be at or below our previous levels. This is another chart showing all of these performance tests that we run. Again, these are run on every change. So if we screw up, we know about it right away, which is really important. And you can see here the purple dots are our new changes, and the green is what it already was. And on the far left in the top graph, you can see we're obviously above the green. And on the far right, after these performance improvements, we're significantly below the green, and that's what we're lining. So I think a lot of you are beginning your computer science studies. You're trying to figure out what you want to do, maybe. And I think the most important things are first to find a set of problems that will help you grow in the direction that you want to grow. A lot of the work that I do is based on a field called human-computer interaction that has multiple different interpretations. But I focus on a lot of usability, making software easier to use. Some people are really interested in performance, for example. That's something that I have to do as part of my work. My main task is making the browser really easy to use and a pleasure to use. Another point is to take ownership of your future. I know myself, and probably many of you have, at one point in time, met somebody who doubted their capabilities, who told them, I don't think you can do this. It might have been an employer who said, look, you just don't have the experience or the resume for us to hire you for an internship. And I think that that's really important that you don't let that slow you down. And open source software is a really cool tool for that, because if a company says, we don't want to hire you, that doesn't mean that your summer is lost. You can join an open source software project. It doesn't have to be Mozilla, it can be any of them. And gain all of that same experience over the summer. You'll come back and you'll be able to put on your resume, I fixed these 4 bugs, and also because it's open source, you can talk about it, right? So you can say, I fixed these 4 bugs, and Firefox, 400 million people use the code that I wrote on a daily basis. It's tested, it's verified through a reviews process. It's really cool. And nobody is going to tell you no. I'm more than happy to have your help. So take ownership of your future. Don't let another company or another person tell you that you can't gain experience. So there's a book that I think is a really great book if you're interested in software usability or just usability in general. It's not just, this book isn't actually focused on software. It's called The Design of Everyday Things. And there's a website if you want to get involved with Mozilla called whatcanIDoForMozilla.org. It's created by a coworker of mine. In that website it'll say like, do you know C++? You say yes or no. And if you don't, then they'll say, okay, do you know JavaScript? Yes or no. It's like, do you know these languages? Like, do you know Turkish or do you know Korean? And so it'll try and find different ways that you can help out. So, with that, I want to thank everybody for having me here, and I want to open up for any other questions that I might not have gotten to. A question over here?
What's your average day like?
So the question was, what's your average day like? So my average day starts out, I go through my email. The shit never stops at Mozilla. So I can go to sleep with 0 unread emails and wake up with 80 unread emails. And then, so I go through my emails, let's go pretty quickly. And then the next thing that I do is I go through my review requests, which are other people who have put up patches and they're requesting peer review. All of our work is peer reviewed. So then I do that, and then after I do that, then I start working on fixing my own bugs. And we have meetings, I Skype with my coworkers all the time. I see them face to face. Question here?
What do you think about the possible implementation of encrypted media extensions in HTML5 and how an open source browser like Mozilla will deal with that?
Alright, so the question, that's a deep question. The question is, how do I feel that some of the encrypted media extensions will affect Mozilla and other open source browsers? Okay. So, one, that is, I most likely will say the wrong thing, because it's a very touchy subject right now. But I will say that there are smart people working on solving this. I'm not one of those people, and it's going to be, I think that we're working towards some really good solutions. And I don't think we're just going to throw our hands up in the air and say we're not willing to find a good solution. Yeah, over here.
What was the main reason you chose Firefox?
What was the main reason that I chose Firefox to work for? Well, it's kind of funny. So I happened to meet a project manager at Mozilla. He lived in Ann Arbor at the time. And talked to him. I was already working on open source software at the time. So I met him. We started talking, and he was kind of my entryway into Mozilla. I've always liked Firefox, so ever since the early 80s of Firefox. Sometimes it's just who you meet. Sometimes you meet somebody and they open up a door that you weren't expecting. All right, well, thank you again for having me.